Hello, welcome to the Fate of the Arts podcast, episode 2. I'm Anthony Etherin, and this is a re-upload of my 2022 conversation with Jane Espenson. Jane, as you know, I'm a huge fan of your work, especially Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which I was born in 1981, same year as Buffy. So I was 16 years old when it started, and I was already obsessed with monsters and especially the classic monsters. So obviously it was made for me, that show. But it's not just Buffy. There's Firefly and Dollhouse, Once Upon a Time, which I'm currently rewatching. So yeah, it's such a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to meet you too. A colleague of mine on Foundation, the show I'm working on now, told me I must follow you, that you were exactly the kind of thing I love. And sure enough, I'm now a huge fan. Whenever you tweet, I just stare at the little poems and try to figure out how they work and how you did them. I'm just in awe.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And of course, you can imagine how I felt when you started following me on Twitter as a fan of your work. And obviously you are interested in wordplay, not just literary wordplay, but all kinds of wordplay and word games, because every day on Twitter, I see you're tweeting your Wordle results.
Right. I just love it. And now I've discovered Redactyl, which I think is even more fun, where you've got a big block of redacted text and you've got to guess what words are in the text. And it works on two different things. You have to look at the syntax of the sentence. You just sort of have the syntax without any other words and figure out what are the only words that could make sense there. And then you have to read the text and figure out what the topic of discussion is. Oh my God, I love a word game.
I haven't heard of that one. I don't know how that's.
You will love it.
I'll have to try it.
God, you're expect to spend an hour every day now you have to devote to Redactyl.
See, a lot of the people I know in these circles, the big thing is cryptic crosswords, which it has been for about 100 years. That's the main thing. Do you do those?
Yes, I was introduced to those in college because we don't really have them in the US so much, and certainly not when I was growing up. We just had regular crosswords. And then in college, someone who had lived in England showed me how they worked. I couldn't believe there was anything so gorgeous, that anyone had worked out so many ways to clue an ordinary word. Like the first one that I had explained to me, I will never forget it, was look sultry at 0 input. And to figure out that that's pout, putting 0 input. It was like the shades flying open in what had been a dark room, and light floods in, and oh my God, someone is constructing these things every day this cleverly. Never look back. Love them.
Yeah, I don't play them too much. I don't know why I've got this stubborn part of me looks at them and thinks, you're trying to trick me.
But it's exactly what you do. I mean, that's a thing. I could imagine you building some wonderful little bit of verse that's around realizing that you've put little bits of words into other words to make new words that reveal what it's all about. Oh my goodness. I don't understand. I don't love them.
Well, I definitely see the appeal of setting them. Perhaps I'm more sadistic than masochistic. Perhaps I want to create these problems for other people.
Oh, I agree. In fact, I just am exploring now this program that helps you compose crossword puzzles, just standard crossword puzzles, American crossword puzzles. But it does all the fiddly bit for you of figuring out if your grid is fillable with common words. So you can spend all the time coming up with very cool clues or very cool theme entries and stuff. You can do all the creative stuff and let it do the grunty stuff of going oh, there's this many words in English that start with T and end with A. So, you're limited to these words. I love making a puzzle. I agree. It's more fun than solving it.
Well, that sound that you just remind me of palindromes, which are obviously always on my mind, but the looking for words that end with certain letters and begin with certain letters or with certain groups. And you told me that you've written some palindromes.
I have. I wish I brought some with me because I did compose a couple that I was very proud of. Boy, it's hard. And I was employed to rewrite a pilot that never ended up becoming a TV show. But the characters in this show, the author who had done the original work on this pilot had come up with the idea that one of the characters sort of spoke in palindromes, which is, of course, extraordinarily hard to do. You couldn't really do it unless you were one of those aliens from the movie Arrival. But it meant that as I was rewriting it, I was sort of going through and finding more places to put more palindromes. So there was a very natural place for a character to ask another character, "Are you a nurse?" And so she was able to respond, "Nurses run." And it was just like, it's a palindrome that's hidden in this. Oh my God, it's so much fun. I love them. I'm curious about how you do them. Do you start at the middle and work out? Is there a point at which you're starting from the ends and working in too? Because otherwise it just never ends.
Yeah, well, I think generally the best thing to do is start in the middle, but then you do run into this problem that you've made the last part the most difficult. Whereas if you start at the beginning and the end, the last part is the easiest part, so you can finish it. So I do a bit of both, but anyone starting out, I always say start in the middle as a confidence builder.
Thank you so much. That I feel validated.
And I'm sure I saw a video of yours where you're talking about Scrabble, and you're a keen Scrabble player. Have you ever entered tournaments?
No, I'm too shy. I would love to like attend a Scrabble club to see how good I am. Is it worth going to a tournament? But the idea of showing up at the Scrabble club and maybe making a fool of myself is not appealing. I need some sort of confidence booster to get me through the door.
Yeah, I've never played it competitively. I enjoy playing Scrabble, but I saw, in fact, in the first episode of this series, I talked to Eric Chaikin, who directed a film called Word Wars, which is about Scrabble tournaments. And the people who do those tournaments they memorize dictionaries, and I think I don't want to do that. I don't think I would want to do that.
There are people, the really good players can play Scrabble in languages they don't speak because it is just about memorizing that word list. Of course, you're memorizing a dictionary in a foreign language. I really think that we need to celebrate the neurodiverse, because I think there are things that they do that neurotypicals find hard. And the world needs all different kinds of people. And I think that there is, in some of these games and skills, I think there is an advantage to just being wired so that you can do that, so you can perseverate, so you can really care enough to do that work of all that memorization and keep it. It's hard to keep it.
Yeah, but it's remarkable powers of concentration.
Yeah,
I'm constantly distracted.
Yeah, I'm impatient, but I do love Scrabble.
You've studied linguistics to a very high level, and I was reading about this recently. You've worked with George Lakoff.
Yeah, George was my advisor. He was like my buddy all the way through college and grad school. Guided my work, which was about metaphorical understandings of causation. How we speak about causation tells you how we understand causation. And it turns out everything is really basic and really physical when you get down to how we actually understand things. We understand like a truck hitting another truck, and that's how we see causation. Everything gets boiled down to sort of physical interactions, and just that fact that we frame the world metaphorically, that we don't understand complicated things complicatedly, we understand them in a very simple, we boil them down to simple physical things. So, even, how do we talk about being emotionally affected? I was moved, I was touched, I was hit by a truck and moved to a different location. It's like we understand everything. If you look at our language, it was brought about. Okay, the word bring is in there. I fell sick, the word fall is in there. Everything is mapped with motion. And I think that fact really has helped inform my writing, because I love having characters speak metaphorically. I think that it more closely reflects how we actually understand the world. So I'm always looking for what's the most visceral language I can give this character, and you find it in those metaphors.
Yeah, well, no, I see this in your work. One that comes to mind from Buffy. I wasn't going to mention Buffy this early on. I wanted to do other things, but I'm going to. There was an interaction between Giles and Willow, and this is in an episode you wrote, so I'm assuming it's your line, where Giles says, "We need to be level-headed," and Willow says, "I'm the level-headed one," and it's like things are rolling off your head. It's a great joke and a great use of extended metaphor.
I don't remember if I wrote that or not, but yes, that's exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about. And Tara had a line about like staying up to see sunrise feels like you're watching the day from the wrong side, something like that, where you sort of get this image of the day as a thing you can peek up over the two horizons of. I love extending a metaphor. Absolutely. That's exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about.
Yeah. With your work in the study of metaphor, we're talking about conceptual metaphor in general, but you specialized in seeing how causality works. Because in my own, I started the PhD, didn't finish it, but I was because I was a physicist, and I started the PhD in how art and science interacted in the first half of the 20th century. And of course, metaphor became incredibly important to the physics of the first half of the 20th century once quantum mechanics emerged, because there's no way you can literally describe what's going on. It all has to be described in metaphors.
That's right. Gates and things, right?
Mm. Even now, quantum foam, it's a foam. Okay, so what does that mean?
Oh, wow.
Of course, it's not really a foam, and then you get all these ontological problems of you've got these solid metaphors for something which is actually quite mysterious still.
And you're at the edge where it breaks down, where the wave versus particle stuff, where you're like, well, maybe neither are the right thing, but we can only understand things. We can't understand things without translating them into something we can understand. So even if it's between a wave and a particle, we have to say wave and particle to understand it. I may be getting the physics wrong, but I'm pretty sure about the language part.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like they're metaphors for each other, but without either one being the actual thing. It's all very strange.
No, that's a really good point. That things can be metaphors for each other. That in causation, going to a place and receiving an object are very equivalent. In fact, they are so equivalent that our language for going to a place is getting there. We talk about receiving the destination. And let me see, is there a thing? Yes. Well, going crazy. You're going to a new state of being. But let's see if there language where getting an object is talked about as going to a place. There must be. Let's just take it for written.
Yeah.
So they are there. They are sort of twin ways of understanding, and even when we try to tease them apart, they talk about each other. But I'm sorry, you were talking about your dissertation, your PhD work. I want to hear more.
Well, I think that's all there is to it, really. It didn't last very long. I didn't. I dropped out quite early on, realizing it was going to be quite a stressful experience.
And there was big money to be made in poetry, so.
Of course. Well, in your own experience, did you consider that you would want to stay in academia for the long run, or did you always want to get out of there and become a writer?
I always wanted to write for TV. I didn't think it was going to be possible. My dad was a professor. That looked very appealing. But the longer I was in the PhD program, the more I realized it wasn't what I wanted to do. And so I was getting a little desperate when because I wasn't really getting any closer to getting the PhD. It sort of wasn't solidifying. This dissertation wasn't turning into a dissertation. So I was looking around for, is there a way to do what I really want to do? And I found the way in, which at the time was two different open doors that I found. One was that you could submit scripts to Star Trek without an agent, and the other was the Disney ABC Writers Program. And both of those sort of working together got me into the business without any connections or any means to move to LA until those both panned out for me.
The Star Trek thing's fascinating that they would do that. That's quite an amazing opportunity.
When you look back at it, it's even more amazing. It was Star Trek Next Generation, and they already felt like, well, with the original series plus this, we've already used up so many stories. We were kind of running out. We need to open up the doors to other writers to come in and pitch ideas. Now look at how many more years of story they've gone through. It's amazing how deep that well turned out to be, to use a metaphor.
Yeah. Which we all do all the time. I mean, that's George Akerloff's big contribution, wasn't it? Look, pay attention to what you're saying. You are using these things all the time.
So right. Metaphors by George Lakoff, highly recommended text.
Yeah, definitely. So then you worked in branding. Was that was?
Yes. Well, I was still in grad school. I got a job at a company called Lexicon in San Rafael, so it was near Berkeley, and I still do work for them. To this day, I will help name a product. So they say, okay, we've got a baby formula or a computer chip or a floor wiper or a car or something. A mop is what I mean. Floor wiper is what I mean. Is the word mop that I couldn't find. And we need a name for it. And you end up, you make a list of things that would be a good name for this product, which of course, how do you do that? Metaphor. And like, okay, how do we want to think about this car? And often you're told, like, you may not even be told what the product is. You're being told, okay, name a good name that would be a good name for a ship. And it turns out you're naming a car or you're naming, whatever. And it's not a ship, but they want the feeling of a ship. So when we named Pentium computer chips, there had been like 386 chips, I'm forgetting now. But they wanted the sense of fiveness, that this is the next thing after 3 and 4. This is sort of version 5. So we came up with all these potential names that suggested fiveness. Pentium ended up winning. And you can see right away, oh yeah, it's 5. And one of the things I did was I wrote up little descriptions for each of the potential names to sort of go, like Pentium is like, it sounds like a bank. It's solid, it's reliable, it's got Roman columns in it, Whereas the name Festa, that only very lightly suggests 5, and it sounds sunnier. It's more open, more Mediterranean. It's got fest in it. It's got a party in it, and then you give it to the clients, and they can see what these names bring with them. It's like a dream job to apply the linguistics work that I did, and I love going back to it now. Just working for them when they've got a product where I can help. And you just turn in hundreds. You turn in word lists of hundreds and hundreds of names, not with a whole description, just with the names. And there's nothing more satisfying than realizing there's always another name that would be good for this product. You can always find more. It's the same way when I was writing sitcoms and you realize there's always another joke. Even if you throw out every joke in the script on Wednesday night and you've got to shoot it on Friday, you thought you had written the only jokes could be written on this topic. No, there's always more. You can always replace it. You find this too. Do you find this in your poems that when you go like, oh, I can't use this word. It's the perfect word. It conveys the exact thing, but it screws up the other end of the palindrome. Do you find you can always find another word?
Yeah, a lot of the time. I mean, sometimes you're playing a game of compromises anyway, where a word of one part is so good you have to use it, and then you just have to put up with the other half not being quite as good. But then you try to disguise that by putting a really good bit into the second half so that it balances. It's all this strange balancing act. And again, we're back to palindromes. I noticed that I looked up at lexicon branding, named Sonos.
Yes, that's right. Very
Of course.
good. Yes, I know. Isn't that good? Don't you feel like that probably helps the product? I mean, you can read, if the box is turned upside down, you can still read it. All sorts of advantages. Yeah, I actually did some work while I was still there, when I was still in grad school, where I was like making a list of, here are all the letters, capital and lowercase, that can be turned upside down. So I saw you did a thing, you posted it on Twitter the other day, jaded paper.
Yeah.
Yeah, where you could turn those upside down. And I was taken right back to lexicon. If I was working on exactly that, like, is there an advantage to suggesting brand names where you can do that, where it'll be a good word, or it'll be the same word, or you can flip it this way or flip it that way. I feel like there's vistas of naming that are still unexplored that involve that.
Yeah.
While we're talking about the names of word things, I wanted to ask you about one. My dear friend Michelle helped name her brother's band's album. So her brother had a band, they put out an album, and she suggested the brilliant name of Glass-Colored Roses. And I think that's just brilliant. Is there a name for that? It's like a spoonerism with a whole word. Is there a name for that trick?
I would just call it a type of spoonerism, like you say. I don't know. We could call it a word unit spoonerism. That would be my very scientific description.
Love it.
Well, let's now move on to Buffy, because I'm growing impatient about. I need to talk about Buffy.
I just want to talk about words, but I'm happy to talk about Buffy too.
Well, there are plenty of words in Buffy.
Yes.
In preparation for this, because as you know, I'm a Buffy nerd. I watched all of the episodes you wrote back to back.
Oh my God.
It was a lot of fun.
When people could tell me that they'd know right away it was mine, because I thought I was being a chameleon. I thought it was just, oh, you won't be able to tell this is me. I'm so good at sounding just like someone else. People can tell.
Well, in good ways, though. I think your sense of humor is one indicator. Definitely. You wrote a lot of the funniest episodes, for sure.
I tried to.
But one thing, just watching them back to back, one thing I noticed is the connections between episodes. That's very much like you're working on the same ideas episode to episode, even though in real time there are other people's episodes in between. Because
I'm amazed, because I have a terrible memory, and I feel like I approach everything as a blank slate. So if I was, it probably was personal stuff I was going through. I don't know. That's amazing.
I'll give an example.
Yeah.
Band Candy, which I think is the first episode you wrote.
Yeah.
That's the one where famously Giles and Joyce have sex on the hood of a police car. And then you wrote the Earshot episode, which is when Buffy finds out about that.
Right.
In the context of a really, really good joke.
Thank you. Yes. Now that actually may be an artifact of my short memory. I only remember stuff I did, not what stuff other people did. So if I'm going to call something back, it'll probably be for one of my own episodes, because it's the only stuff I know for sure. But usually when stuff like that happens, it's sort of happenstance, because the structure of the episode is not something I have any control over. That is done by the room as a whole, and I don't tend to get involved in the structure discussions. I am there for the dialogue. I love the words, and you're right, Buffy's made out of words, but it's also got some structure in it, and I let other people worry about that. So something like that, where something that happened in one episode sets up something that happens in another episode, that isn't something the original writer or the individual writer really has a lot of control over. That tends to be determined by the whole hive mind.
Well, that's interesting. So you just want to focus on the words, because I was going to ask you as well about you wrote an episode of Game of Thrones, and I guess there are several layers. You've got the books, then the showrunners are going to have their vision.
Yeah.
And then when it comes down to writing an episode, I suppose you already have a very strict template to work within.
Yes, which I loved. That was the easiest job I ever did. I was a freelancer in season 1, and they brought me in, and they were still being very, very faithful to the book at that point, because it's season 1 and they got the books. So they were like, you will write this chunk of the book from this page to this page. The Daenerys story had either been slid backwards or forwards relative to that, so it was a different chunk of her story, but it was still faithful to the book. And so it was very easy. The first thing I did was I actually typed up all the dialogue that was given in that section of the book. You end up with like a 12-page scene, because people in novels can just talk on and on and on. In TV, you don't really do a lot of scenes that are longer than 3 or 4 pages. So then then you trim, and then you figure out what's the TV version of this super long scene. But it really, I wanted to be faithful to a lot of the language in the book, but also you couldn't. And a lot of it, conversations that are just described, you now have to figure out what they actually said. So it freed me from structure, freed the whole production from structure in a wonderful way. They didn't have to worry if the story was going to pay off. They knew it would, because it pays off in the book. So you really could concentrate on the level that I like, which is sort of that word, even syllable level of finding exactly the right way to convey the thing that has to be said in the scene. I loved that job. That was awesome.
Yeah, so it is a form of constrained writing. I can definitely see the appeal.
All of TV is constrained writing, and the directing is constrained directing. And if you're not constrained by, well, you're constrained by everything, by the budget, by the number of pages in a script, number of pages in a scene, even by what this particular actor can do. And those constraints are what makes it fun. I see so many parallels between what we do.
Yeah, definitely. I'm also interested to know, with something like with a comedy or a show like Buffy, which is comedic drama, how much do you feel like you can express your own sense of humor, or how much do you have to use the established sense of humor of the show? Is there a conflict at all?
Sometimes there is. I have written a lot of jokes that end up not making it to screen because the showrunner will say, this just isn't our tone. Like this, this is too broad, or this is too lighthearted for the moment, or this pulls everybody out of it. But I consider those sort of what we call room jokes. Like in a comedy, you tell a joke in the writer's room, even though you know it's not right to go in the script. Makes people laugh, lightens the moods, makes other people start thinking comedically. Like sometimes they put in a joke knowing it'll get cut, because what's the harm? The showrunner will enjoy it, even as they're saying, well, we can't really do this. And it gets it out of your system. And every now and then, they say, I wouldn't have put a joke here, but I really like it. Let's try it. And I feel like those are my moments of real victory, where I got a joke in a moment where people didn't think a joke would work. Because I think people joke in real life a lot more than they do on TV. And the more jokes you can get in, the more that you are writing true to life.
Oh, I like that. So the more real it becomes.
Yeah, I think so. I think we under-joke far more than we over-joke on TV.
That's interesting. So a lot of dramas are actually, they're too serious.
Yes, I think so.
And not true to life because of it.
Absolutely. In real life, we use jokes to do any reaction you have to a situation, you can do with a joke. You can convey how appalled you are. You can convey how scared you are. There are jokes for everything, and we use them all way more than TV characters do.
So another way that you would, in addition to humor, another way you have to conform to the style of a show is in the way the characters speak. And this, in Buffy, it's very interesting. What's called Buffy Speak.
Right. Yes,
It seems like it must have been a lot of fun turning nouns into adjectives just by adding a Y. Things like that.
absolutely. And I feel like Buffy and Friends was also doing that. Uh, Phoebe almost speaks like Buffy. And again, I think that's realistic. I think people do that. And I still say sitch. It's just quicker than situation and more fun. And I used to call it short mouth, like just shortening words. You don't need all those other syllables, and that
People know what you mean.
Yeah, exactly. Stop talking when people know what the rest of the word is.
Did sitch come from Buffy? Would that be the first?
It might have. You might be able to trace it to something earlier, but I think it was Buffy.
Because I've seen that the first recorded use of the word Google as a verb was on Buffy.
Was it?
I've heard this.
I remember that was if it is, that's really interesting, because I know I wrote about Googling. I believe I had Willa saying I've Googled till I can't Google no more. But I wonder, Gilmore Girls, which I also wrote for, used Google as a verb. And I felt like that was before I was on staff. Well, this is very interesting. We need to research this. Someone needs to find out.
Need to Google it.
Yes, listeners, Google it. Was Buffy the first use of Google as a verb? I find it hard to believe I would have innovated that without noticing it. So I bet if it hadn't already been televised, I bet I'd heard it used that way and just with my own ears.
Yeah, of course, that's the other side of it. It wouldn't necessarily be invented for the show. It would just be something that people were using, and it was at the right time that it would appear on Buffy.
Yes.
Yeah, I've written down some favorite Buffy speak here, and I think this is one of yours. Again, this is in an episode you wrote. We need to find a non-slayy solution, meaning a solution which doesn't involve slaying.
Yes, that probably was me. I don't remember specifically, but yes, I mean, it's a lot more fun than a non-slaying solution.
Yeah. And of course, we've got slayage, boy-friendly.
Yeah.
Do the wacky, meaning to be wacky.
Oh, that doesn't sound like me. Because remember, the whose name goes on an episode can sometimes be kind of random.
But it's an interesting way of speaking that I'm sure it's affected the way I speak, having watched all those episodes.
Well, some of it is clever young people trying to carve out something different for themselves than how their parents speak. And some of it is just listening to how people really speak, which is what you really learn from a linguistics degree, is you just learn to listen. And we aren't good at planning what the end of the sentence is when we start it. And so we'll end up looking for a word that we can't remember, or a concept that doesn't quickly have an immediate word that comes to mind. Or I'm thinking my characters use "and" a lot more when they're using a list of things than I'll think a lot of writers do. A lot of writers will say, we need X, Y, and Z. When you're actually speaking, you're more likely to say, well, you need X and Y and Z, because you don't know how long the list is gonna be.
Yeah.
You don't know to put the comma in because you don't know yet that you have a third thing. And so I think that boy-friendly is the kind of word you come up with when you realize, oh, I need a word that says this quickly, this'll do. And I think we need to pay more attention to writing characters speaking in that way where it sounds like they're having to improvise, because every one of us is improvising when we're blathering on like I'm doing.
Well, there's another thing in Buffy is the type thing. So something type thing.
Right.
I need a steak type thing.
Yeah.
And again, that's the character having to think quickly and come up with something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so you can do that in any kind of show. If you're writing a super serious spy drama, the characters should still sound like they don't know what the end of the sentence is when they start. Even if it doesn't come out with something funny or particularly innovative, it should still not sound written. And I think there's way too much when anytime any character walks up to a character and says, I don't believe I've had the honor. No, nobody says that. Think about how, don't write like you've heard other TV characters speak, write like you hear people actually speak.
Yeah, good advice. But within that, you are sometimes just having fun with the words. I've got an example here. This is in an episode called Gingerbread.
Oh yeah, the second episode.
And Buffy finds a journal that Willow has been drawing symbols on, and the symbol is related to the big you know what I'm going to say.
Yes, say it.
But can I say it? That's the thing. Can I say it? So Willow tries to defend herself, saying it's just a doodle, and what she says is, "A doodle. I do doodle. You too. You do doodle too."
Yes, I think you skipped do. It's a doodle. I do doodle. You too. You do doodle too.
Did I get it wrong?
I think you said you doodle too instead of you do doodle too, but I'm not sure. At any rate, yes, poor Allison. I kept making her say these tongue twisters. And yes, I love that one. Like, when do you get that chance to as soon as you write the word doodle, and I realized the next thing that makes sense to say is I do doodle. And then, well, then you're off and running. How can you not just try? And I like that one. It may sound a little written. But I think you've got to find one like that, not the one you've heard before. The version of that you've heard before is, I know that he knows that you know, and it's like, if you're actually speaking, you may say that because you've heard it before and thought it was funny, I guess. But that putting of the at the end isn't anything but gasping, begging for a laugh, I feel. Because in real life, when we hear ourselves repeating words, we try to stop it. I don't know why Willow didn't stop it. Maybe I'm pointing out the problem with my own joke.
Well, because with it, as well as having the realism, you clearly like playing with language. So I think it's great to include these things. Another way to play with language in a TV show is with character names, and or business names. I again, like I said, I'm rewatching Once Upon a Time, so I noticed the Game of Thorns flower shop. I don't know if that was yours.
Yeah, that was me.
Fantastic.
I would have loved to be a writer on The Good Place. They had so many wonderful punny business names. Oh my God, that would have been just my dream job. I love that show. I adore that show. And they got to write jokes like that played with language all the time. Simpsons does too. In the background, you'll see various wonderful business names in The Simpsons and Good Place that I wish I'd written. Yeah, all I got was Game of Thorns.
Yeah, but it's a great one.
Thanks.
And what about in Buffy? Surely you get to know, you've got all these monsters. We know about vampires and werewolves, but then there's a whole pantheon of made up demons. Did you get to name any of those?
Oh yeah, I got to name lots and lots of demons. And those are always fun because you're looking up Latin words and making them into a thing that sounds like a monster. Or finding the gem of Amara that allows Spike to go out in the sunshine. I love that one because it doesn't have a K or a Z. It's an alien artifact without a K in it, which is very rare. There's a certain similarity that you end up getting into when you're naming things in sci-fi and fantasy. It's just a lot of Ks to make something sound exotic and alien and powerful. There's sound symbolism. Certain sounds convey certain things. So to name an alien artifact with no stop consonants, I was like, that's good. That's good stuff. I like that, Gem of Amara.
It sounds great. Yeah, it's beautiful too, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It sounds nice.
Yeah, and it sounds important, which of course it is.
And it does it without a stop consonant. Hard to do.
So what other opportunities are there to play with language? when you're writing dialogue, or when you're naming things in a TV show?
Well, sound symbolism is a lot of it. You know, that if people out there aren't aware that like the letter B genuinely conveys roundness. If you start just listing things that start with B, they're round things. They're round and they're bouncy. And you know, S is slithery hot things, sort of. And you know, you can a lot of letters, a lot of phonemes have associated meanings. You can use that when you're naming a mythical gem, a monster, a room in the emperor's house on Foundation. There are lots of opportunities or a character. If you want to convey that a character is slick and smooth, put some S's in their name. If you want to convey that they're round and bouncy, maybe there's some B's. And you can also use it when you're naming a product. And it's amazing how much meaning you can put into 5 or 6 letters. And then I went to Advil, which actually isn't a matter of sound symbolism, but more associations that we have. So you're supposed to look at Advil and think that it's really advanced and it's a big advantage and all those ADV wonderful words. But in fact, your mind actually splits it into ad and vil, and your subconscious knowledge of Latin roots tells you that means toward badness, vileness. So it's the name doesn't convey what it's supposed to. Doesn't seem to have hurted any though. It's still very popular. I took some yesterday.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, again, it's related to your work in linguistics with conceptual metaphor, isn't it? It's a bit like the way that we describe sounds as being sharp or flat. You know, what's sharp or flat about them, really? It's just,
yes,
it's how we see it.
Yes, exactly. There's something experientially very true about sharp. Like you know without being told which one is which. I love that stuff, and I've managed in a career. TV writing is a career that rewards breadth of abilities. If you can manage people as well as understand the language of the frame and how to direct and how to not just write but also produce, huge advantage to you. And yet I've managed to make this 30-year career by worrying about sounds and syllables, which just I guess shows how flexible this career is, that you despite what anybody says, just if you can do one thing, you can fool people into hiring you for a long time.
Well, let's have a bit more about process and how the episodes are written. You've already touched on this before, but there is a difference between American TV shows and British TV shows in that we tend to have very short runs, only 1, 2, maybe 3 writers who all work together on every episode. Whereas when I look at American TV shows, you've got these long seasons, teams of writers that are huge by comparison. So what's the process like of coming up with ideas? I mean, you have already said that you try to stay out of the plot structuring.
Well, it's interesting. American TV, to the extent that there even still is such a thing as American TV, there's so much international stuff going on now. The things more and more are looking like the British model. Where you could have one creator write all the episodes of a short season. That's not unusual now, that an American showrunner can do that. But there are still shows that sort of follow the Buffy Once Upon a Time model, 22 episode seasons, a large staff. And what you generally do is you spend the first part of the season finding the shape of the season. What's going to happen this year? Way back in the day, you didn't have to do that because every episode returned you to status quo at the end. You could air the episodes in any order. Charlie's Angels were going to have an adventure. And unless a character were leaving, there weren't really storylines that went from episode to episode. But let's assume that we're in the era that's after that, but before everything went to 10 episode season. Sometimes the writers are sent on a lovely retreat Ron Moore would rent a house in Tahoe, and all the writers would go there for a week. Amy Sherman Palladino would take the Gilmore Girls writing staff to Las Vegas, and you would do work in this wonderful exotic location. The whole staff is together, and you're working on those big, what are going to be the big plot turns that happen this season? Where approximately are they going to happen? What is making sure every character has something exciting they're going to do this year? All that stuff. And that the whole staff works on together. I often feel particularly useless at that stage of the process because we're not down to the syllable level yet. But sometimes I'll have a thing. Sometimes I'll say, it would be cool for this character if they did this. And we're sort of figure out the broad strokes. And then you get more and more granular. Then you figure out, okay, what's going to happen in each episode. Before the season starts, you probably haven't, before anything starts being written, you have an idea what's going to happen in all of the episodes. 22 episode season, there's probably a couple in there, usually like episode 15, 16, and 17, where you're going like, well, we'll figure those out when we get there. But then we know what's going to happen in the last 3. Then you start breaking individual episodes. We're going to sit here for all week or 2 weeks and just break episode 1, just break episode 2. Breaking means you figure out what's going to happen in every scene. Sometimes in the room, you'll do scene work. You'll actually figure out not just the rough thing of what's going to happen in that scene, but some dialogue, a few jokes, making sure you know what emotional change every character is going through in every scene. On some shows, that's left to the individual writer. On Gilmore Girls, the scenes were figured out in tremendous detail, and everything was written out in complete sentences on the whiteboard in very, very tiny letters. On other shows, on Buffy, I was often sent out with just, here's a list of scenes with the very broadest, Willow convinces Buffy she shouldn't go for this. She should step back. Yeah, okay. That's all you go out knowing. So then the writer actually, that's when I feel like, okay, now I have something to do. You're sent home often with a beat sheet, list of what happens in all the scenes. Now you get to start doing dialogue.
Yeah, it's amazing how we all work on different levels as writers. I mean, I'm at the smallest scale of all the letter.
Yes.
But I interviewed Anthony Horowitz a few episodes ago, and I couldn't quite believe it when I asked him about how he goes about writing a novel. And he said that in his mind, he's got 70% of it already before he starts. And I just thought, how on earth can you do that?
Yes, I know exactly what you mean. I love the smallest unit. And yeah, in TV, I'm amazed at how many people are good at all of it. People who are great at structure and great big picture and great plot turns. And then they're great at knowing how to structure an episode. And then they're great at knowing how to have a scene unroll. And then they know how to write good dialogue. Like, how are you good at all of it? I've just picked one thing to be good at. And the rest, I don't even find as interesting. Just yeah, you and I, we get it. It's the little unit. Yeah.
And another thing that's I'm very impressed by that you do on Twitter is every day you do a writing sprint. which I think people need that motivation. It's sometimes very hard to get going. And I certainly lately, I think I wouldn't say I've had writer's block. I'm not sure that really exists either, but certainly I've had too many days recently where I find it hard to just get something done.
Well, here's the secret. I don't have those every day. What's the pattern for when I hold the writing sprint? It's when I need motivation that I call for them when I'm having trouble sitting down and getting started on something. And once you're going, it's great. It's fun. It's just like getting in a pool. Like, it's just the getting in. You guys need to step in and it's cold around your knees. But then once you're in, it's great. So I think and I also believe in the concentrated 1 hour work session where if you sit down and you're like, I'm going to write till this is done, or I'm going to write till dinner's ready, or I'm going to write for 3 hours, you stretch out the work to fill it, and you can go, well, I'll avoid this because I'll go do something else for a second. If you've only got an hour, you can't get distracted by anything else, and you sort of can't put off doing the hard bits, because why put it off? It's only an hour. You can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I just call for one of those when I need it. Sometimes I call for when I need to clean the kitchen. Doesn't always mean I need to write, because you can use them for non-writing tasks. But usually if you see me calling a writing sprint, I need a writing sprint. And that's why I tell people, like, I don't own this franchise. Call for one of your own whenever you need it. Just declare a writing sprint. Every now and then, when I feel like I have bothered people on Twitter by calling for so many writing sprints in a short period of time because I'm on a deadline, I'll type the tweet calling for a writing sprint, but I won't send it. I'll fool myself by going, look, I declared a writing sprint. I have to work for an hour. But I haven't actually haven't hit the tweet button.
Well, I think it's nice when you do. And I'm going to have to start following them. It's normally a difficult time of day for me with our time difference. But have other people contacted you saying that they take part and they really got something from it?
Yes, every now and then I will hear someone will say, hey, my novel just came out. I wrote it on your writing sprint. And it's like, what? Like, that's crazy. I'm so delighted that people find them useful. Because it was just a whim I had one day when I was on Twitter going, like, I really should work for an hour. I know I'll force myself to work for an hour by telling Twitter I'm going to work for an hour. Now I can't tweet during that hour because I'll be a big fat liar. So it's I'm glad people find them useful, and yeah, people seem to find them really useful.
Well, I guess one advantage of being as busy as you are is that because you're working on multiple projects, if you're not in the mood to write one, you've always got another one to move to, or is that difficult? Is that not how you go about it? Do you like to get all the work done on one episode that you're writing and then move to another?
No, I'll mix it up. So sometimes I'm writing an episode of one show, and then I'm also working on a freelance episode of something else. We're doing a rewrite on something else, and I'll switch it up within the hour. That's a good way to make progress on both without feeling like anything's going stagnant, as you work half hour on one, half hour on the other.
Really, within the same hour?
Yeah.
I'd be terrified that I'd just be putting the wrong characters in the wrong show.
No. Oh, this is a trick. People think that writing drama and comedy are totally different. They're not. They're exactly the same. And you can even go between two shows with really different voices right away, because they're not as different as people think. Humans are humans. Do you live in a comedy or a drama? No, you live in your life. And you would react the same way if serious things or funny things were happening around you. You would still react as you react. So I think they're not as different. And I find it very easy to switch projects. Shows do have a different voice, but that's just, you fall into it. It's like, when you read Jane Austen you spend a couple hours reading Jane Austen, you put the book down, you're still thinking in Jane Austen speak for a while. That happens the second you read your way into the bit where, if I'm starting to write a new scene in the script, I tend to read up to that scene. Now you've got the voice in your head, just like reading Jane Austen, and just keep going.
Well, there's a lot to unpack about how to write for screen and for characters. One thing that occurred to me about Buffy, and this also would apply to a few things you worked on, certainly Once Upon a Time, is if you get to know the actors, does that change how you write the characters? Do you start to put the actors' traits in?
Yes, you do, but it doesn't come from knowing the actors. It comes from watching a whole lot of that character on screen. I tend not to go to set. I don't tend to get to know the actors just because I'm kind of shy and I'm afraid I'll say something wrong, give away something they're not supposed to know yet, accidentally insult them. I've done all those things. And before I decided maybe I shouldn't talk to the actors so much. But you do get to see a lot of them in character because you're watching dailies, you're watching every episode multiple times, you're reading other people's scripts, and you audibly hear their voice when you're writing the script. That's one reason I don't like writing pilots, is there's no actor yet. I don't hear their voice. But if I'm writing for Admiral Adama on Battlestar Galactica, I'm hearing Edward James Olmos in my head, and I can tell when it sounds right. I can tell when it sounds like something Eddie would be comfortable saying, and would sound right saying. And yes, absolutely, I write so that they sound exact, so I can hear that actor's voice. If you can't hear the actor's voice, you've done something wrong. It's just the line. There's something wrong with the line. And I also love it when the actor's physical traits are referenced, because that's another thing we do in real life. We comment on someone's salient physical qualities. If someone's really tall, it gets remarked on, and it influences, if you feel like punching that character in the nose, you would say something about, if I were taller, I could punch you in the nose. We reference it all the time. So that's another reason I like knowing what the actor looks, who the actor is playing the role, because then the other characters will speak about them in the way we really speak about other people.
Yes. And what about when you've got, for example, character of Giles, so a British actor who has to speak, and he's not just British, is he? He's very British.
Very British. Yes, I love writing a British character, but I learned this actually was I'm sort of stealing from Doug Petrie here, one of the other writers on Buffy. This was his observation, I think, that he was looking for, what would a British person say here? What word can I put in Giles's line that's very British? And then he realized he's gonna sound British whether I work things around so he can reference a lift or not. People can hear the actor. So that's a trick, is that I think people sometimes forget that, like, if you're writing a novel, you might want to throw in something to remind people this character's British. Writing TV, their voice is doing it for you. So let that do the work for you. But I also love finding those ways that just are natural for British people to say. I'm fascinated with this different to. I have to say different from or different than. British people say different to. That's crazy to me. And that's the kind of thing I would love to have a character use, because it'll sound right for them, even though it sounds crazy to me.
Well, I say different from, but I know a lot of, yeah.
But have you heard that? Have you heard that different too? I hear it all the time.
Yeah, I do. Yes, I think it's come from similar to, so they're taking similar to and transferring similar and different.
There are people in parts of the United States that will say on accident, sort of analogous to on purpose. I can't say on accident. I have to say by accident.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I love finding those, hearing those, and giving them to a character. Yeah, there are some other British things. It's not the big obvious ones. It's little ones like that. And it's little things like car park and stuff where you're just like, oh, it's fun to put in. You don't have to, but it's fun.
There's one episode of Buffy, I don't think it's one of yours, but where Spike uses the word wanker.
Yeah.
Which was censored over here, which I'm sure it wasn't in America.
No. Oh, and yeah, I love this when something's dirty one place and then another. Sodden. Fury wrote this line. David Fury wrote some lines that I wish I'd written on Buffy. He wrote I thought you were a myth. No, you must have been myth taken. Love that. And he wrote Spike's chair had gotten wet because the ceiling leaked, and he said, my sudden chair's all sudden. And I just love sodding and sodden, and I just love that. Just another naughty word, but that he worked into a very funny pun, I thought, that I wish I'd thought of. Oh, Fury.
In one of your episodes, you have Giles say Burke. I think he calls Wesley a Burke.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Burke, it's rhyming slang. It's short for Berkshire Hunt.
Yes, exactly. I was very tickled. I learned that somewhere and put that in for him. Yeah, isn't that fun? I love rhyming slang. I love any of those little quirks. And anytime I get to stick something like that in there, like feel like you get away with something. And sometimes those are the actor. Sometimes the actor just says, I wouldn't say this, I'm British, I would say this. So there was in also in Band Candy, where the monster like got past the nurse in the hospital to get to all those babies. They kidnapped all those babies, and Giles complains that like the nurse was asleep, and he calls her a dozy cow. Dozy isn't a word that I would ever have thought of was even a word. We don't really have dozy. But I was delighted when he said it, because it's like, that sure sounds like Giles. He knew more what Giles would sound like than I did, certainly in my first script. So often there's a lot of cooperation. Very rarely on Buffy. That was a rare instance. On Battlestar Galactica, the actors were entirely encouraged, make this your own, say it how you'd say it. And James Callis, who played Valtar, really took advantage of that. He would throw out speeches and write new speeches, and damn him, they were better than what we'd written. It was very frustrating. He should be a writer. So good.
The episode you referenced of Buffy, Band Candy, of course, that's when Giles has reverted to his younger self. So I guess there would be more need for cruder Englishisms or Britishisms.
Yeah, I put a little thing in there because he was known as Ripper when he was young, and so when he's talking to Joyce, I had him say, "Let's go out on the tent. Let's go out and tear things up." And I was like, maybe that's why he's called Ripper, is that he liked to say, "Let's go out and tear things up," which isn't really an expression in British or English slang. It's clearly just something that Giles said. But I like putting in that as like, maybe some people will notice that and then decide that's why he was called Ripper.
So what are your future ambitions for writing?
What I am doing now is absolutely perfect for me. I'm on staff on Foundation. I write freelance episodes of Fantasy Island, the new rebooted Fantasy Island. I do a rewrite on another show, and where I just polish episodes of an animated show. And I'm always looking for little side projects. I've got a short story that's going to get published later this year. I'm pretty fully employed, but I sure hope that more jobs keep coming along that have this same shape, where there's a Zoom room I can go to every day and polishes, rewrites, freelances. I love making a meal out of appetizers, both literally and metaphorically. I would rather be lightly involved in 5 projects than deeply involved in one.
Yeah. So you mentioned a short story. I mean, it's quite different from writing a script, isn't it?
Yeah. And sometimes it feels very tedious because I keep being tempted to just, well, this character says this, and then the other character would say that, and you're on your second page of that before you go, oh no, wait, I seem to be writing a script. You have to write all that description of what the room looks like and stuff that we can just, a set decorator will do that part. So sometimes I find it tedious, but when I find the right story I'm excited about telling, it's really fun because you can go inside people's minds, say what they're thinking. I never get to do that. And you can really play with language even more, because I really can only write language that someone would say. You're writing a short story, you can use all those other words that people don't actually say so much, but that you can use when you're describing things that aren't just what people are saying. Oh my God, I do not sound like I should be allowed anywhere near a short story that description of it, but I'm enjoying it. I'm having fun.
I'm sure it's wonderful. I mean, the opposite to that, I guess, would be the comic books. And of course, Buffy did have its 8th and 9th, so on seasons in comic book form, and you wrote some of those.
Those are even worse, though. Those you have to describe every frame. I mean, the dialogue is fun to write, but comic book writing is actually a lot more description. It's less
Okay.
dialogue. You can't fit that much dialogue in it, and you got to describe every frame, every panel. I found it that I would really need a writing sprint for, because I found it a bit tedious to describe all that stuff. I love comic books. I so respect the people who write them, but I found it very challenging.
Yeah, I didn't really think of it that way. The hidden words that are there
Yeah,
in the image.
a lot of
Did you have to
hidden.
design everything that's going on and the shape and how the layout on the page, or is that put down to someone else?
Yes, it unlike scripts, there's never really been a single unified format that has developed for comic books, so it sort of differs from company to company. There are some companies where you do just write the dialogue, and the artist is in charge of breaking that into panels. I think I kind of like that idea because I'm not a director. I don't know how to pick the angle, and I always found it very challenging if I wanted to write a conversation of any length. How do I describe these two characters talking for panel after panel? Do I specify, now we're overhead, now we're looking under her chin, now we're like, it was like, how do I choose? I don't know. It's not what I do.
Well, Jane, thank you so much for doing this, for taking the time to speak to me. As I said at the start, and I'll continue to say, I'm a huge fan of your work, and it's lovely to meet. It's nice to know you're such a lovely person too, and so
Oh,
enthusiastic and intelligent and witty. And yes, thank you.
thank you very much. And I think you're charming as well. And I'm so happy to know you. And I'm so intrigued. I'm going to be sending you emails. I'm going to be bugging you now and then, going like, how did you do this? How do you write that? Hey, I wrote a palindrome. Look at this. Because I'm just so happy to meet someone who cares as much as I do about the tiniest units of meaning.